Short Uber.
And, okay, that is a new feature.
Mhm.
So we'll
Yeah.
bring the meeting to order, and I think we have two topics today. Doug mentioned he had something he wanted to talk about, and then I think what we talked about at the town board meeting was discussing how to best have a workshop or some way of conveying information and answering questions.
Right. So the first one actually, it's pretty quick. So as you know, and I've talked to the town board members about what to do with specifically our recreation programs for 2021. We're in 2021. I had to think for a second. And how to go about that, and a lot of unknown. I'll just remind you real quick. So we pay the city of Canandaigua $15,000 to run our joint city town day camp program. And we didn't pay that full amount last year. We actually ended up paying about $10,000 because we weren't obviously able to have the full program. The city had passed as part of their budget an increased fee for residents of the town of Canandaigua. And so, make a very long story short, I've been going back and forth with the city manager for months now, and I'm saying, basically, if you're going to charge the town residents more, we're not going to work with you. We'll do our own program and a variety of other things. And as you know, we also lost Samantha with her leaving to go to another um, place. And so she was also running our recreation program. So I've really been kind of going back to the drawing board with the city of Canandaigua, and I'm like, keep saying to them, what does it look like if we do an expanded joint program? And what would the cost be? And we actually were able to figure out, and Samantha helped me, we put some numbers together. In 2019, the town of Canandaigua spent $34,000 on recreation programs. That was our summer camp program that we administered, plus the 15,000. That includes the 15,000 that we gave the city, and everything, plus some of Samantha's time. And the city also spent roughly about the same. And so what we were able to look at is, in all, what happens if we combine the two together? And what we looked at is running the programs exactly the way that they operated in 2019. It would cost about $50,000 is basically what the loss would be after the revenue comes in. And we're like, okay, if we split that at 25,000 each, what would a then joint program, how would that look differently, and what would be the benefit for the residents? Well, I had a further conversation yesterday, and I'm working on getting a proposal together to give you all the details on this, but this is a little bit time sensitive. What I talked to the city about yesterday is, okay, them running a joint recreation program, and specifically Heather works in the city manager's office running a joint Canandaigua community recreation program. Heather would participate in our Parks and Rec committee meetings. There would be the constant connection, the single point of connection for all the recreation programs. Instead of having this weird situation where we have a town program and the joint program at Ononda, we would operate one program with multiple age groups at Ononda. We would operate one at Outhouse. We would operate one at Schoolhouse, actually run the kiddie camp at Schoolhouse, and they would take care of all that. They would take care of all the staffing and everything associated with all that, as well as all the supply, and 100% run the joint recreation program for 1 year just to try it in 2021. They coordinate all the events, the activities, the field trips, everything. And what our conversation yesterday was $20,000. So we currently pay 15 for $20,000. It's a lot cheaper. $5,000 extra is a lot cheaper than us hiring somebody to run all that ourselves. So I'd kind of like to move forward and try it for this year, especially with the unknown with COVID and how this is all going to play out. And so what I said to them was an amount not to exceed 20,000. It may be less depending on what programs and what we're fully able to do and how many kids and everything else. But it is a little bit time sensitive. We need to kind of get the brochure out if we're going to move in this direction by about March 1st. So as long as you guys are generally okay with it, we'll keep moving forward, but then we would have something for your March town board meeting with the official proposal and all the details and everything. I just want to make sure that generally speaking, you're okay with the concept. So.
I think that sounds like a good cost-effective way to do it.
Yeah,
I
if
agree. Yeah.
it's for a year, we see how it goes, and
Right.
Yeah.
And that was my thought too. They wanted to do like a multi-year, and I said, let's just try it. Let's just 21 is let's
Right.
just try it 1 year. Let's see what happens, what we learn, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, and then we can figure something out from there. So,
Well, and we're in no position right now with the position being open
right.
to get it organized ourselves. So this is like a really great option, especially for this 1 year, and
Yeah.
we can evaluate at the end.
And there's a lot of logistics, like Gene, I was even thinking this morning, like we'll need to create probably a recreation at Town of Canandaigua email account and have that automatically forwarded to like Heather, and maybe Michelle can help me in monitoring that to make sure that town residents are getting the service. We're gonna have some logistics to figure out, but anyway, we'll do that on our side. So, okay, so that one was that. So anyway.
Okay, and then the discussion, I feel like what we still have on the table from the town meeting was the concept of workshop. And I think we don't, I don't feel like the word workshop has to be the way that we go. I think what we have to do is find a way to answer resident questions. Um, and after the meeting, my thought was, I, I hesitate for it to be like a live forum where people are yelling at us, sort of like how they were. It almost feels better if they were submitting questions and we were answering them as they came in on a place where everyone could see, and calling it a virtual workshop or something like that. It felt like the emotions of it were getting out of hand when we were having live back and forth.
Jane has put together, I don't know, Jane, if you sent it to everyone, I know some of us got some of it, all of the questions from all of the meetings, which was very helpful. Jane, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So I'll, if everyone hasn't gotten it, we should do that. I know some, and as everyone has said, they go into groups, right? The safety of it, the plan, what's it going to look like? I think there are broad general categories. I agree with you, the live format, we might get lost in the weeds, and there's important information that has to go out there. So we can call it a workshop or whatever, informational session, but I think it can be a pre-recorded type of a situation too.
So if I can, and Jean has done a fantastic job in putting together all those questions, and thank you so much, Jean. And they're actually all on that webpage. On the website, if you go to projects and then land acquisition, everything is there. All of the comments that we've received, all the questions that we've received in the public meetings, as well as links to a whole lot of other things. I want to just share my screen with you for a second because I want to show you something. I yesterday spent a little bit of time going through the 200 plus comments that we've received, as well as the questions that Jean was able to document. And so much of it was duplicative. I mean, different variations of what they were saying or asking, but generally categories. And I was able to kind of come up with 3 different categories, one being process and financial impact, and then one being existing conditions and one being proposed conditions. And those are, honestly, that's exactly what we do for anybody making an application for anything in the town of Canandaigua. We require an existing conditions report and then a proposed, or what they're looking to do. The only other category here is process. And then I give you a second to look through here, and then instead of, I read, I kid you not, I bet you I read 35 emails that had to do with tax rate, tax impact, and that stuff. But if you strip all the emotion out of it, they're concerned about taxes being too high and what the impact would be to the increase in the tax rate. So I just kind of, taking just the bare bones, what is the issue? I tried to list it there. And truthfully, when I got done, I was like, I really believe these are the overwhelming majority of the points that have been raised to us, setting aside the ones that say move forward and do it. These are it's really pretty manageable on how we could address these, I think.
Right.
That's what I thought. And I also thought if we tell people, hey, if you see a question that isn't answered, ask the question that you need the information for. I feel like what we're getting often is a lot of opinion, and they're calling it a question. So I think we could be able to answer these so quickly.
It looks like a great summary. I mean, there is a tremendous amount of commonality, amongst all the emails and calls that we've received. So And the
Um,
questions are easily answered too, I think. A lot of the information has been presented already and can be put together in some format.
The only other thing that I see, and I could be missing it, is I've had a lot of people that are concerned with their assessments going up due to our purchase price. I did speak with Pam about that. Initially, she thought that because it was an arm's length dealing, that it would affect the assessment of, no, yes, the assessments of other lake properties. But then she said because it's a different property, it probably would not. So not just the tax rate increase due to purchasing, but right, assessment, and how that would be affected by our
impacts
purchase
on,
price.
yeah, impacts on assessment of other lakefront property, it sounds like. Well, and that's the question too, where the information that somebody put out there, and I can't remember who, about that the value of the surrounding properties typically doesn't get negatively impacted by a park being in their area. I think somebody, I remember seeing it early on that there
That
was,
was, yeah, from Pam.
yeah.
So that's where we also have to, like Sandy McGavran also gave us a publication that she says that values are impacted, and so she has her stuff. So I mean, depending on how we go about this, but like assessments, we could certainly provide Pam Posa's opinion and her research, but then there's also that. So I don't know how you want to present that type of.
I think you have to present both. I mean, I haven't looked at that yet. Recently, maybe I did when we first got it. I think I did actually. But
well, so my thought was maybe even this is really nice in the way that it's formatted. Maybe even something that is about misinformation, not, I mean, in a nicer way, but there's definitely some information that people have either created in their own mind or kind of found and maybe have it right. There's some questions out there and some sort of allegations out there that aren't right, and it would be good maybe to set the record straight somewhere in this workshop. I was thinking of, an actual information session where it might say, hey, this is what we heard, and this is what it is.
Well, some of them didn't Doug address when he responded back to, I think his name was Mr. Hill.
Yes,
Yeah.
I definitely, and I was thinking that's why it should be in this virtual workshop area so people could look at it. Like, yes, that note went to Mr. Hill, but Mr. Hill had the same points as probably a fair number of them are using the similar template to send us a note that's got the same points. So if we put it somewhere in a virtual workshop where we say, hey, here's what we heard and what the facts are as the town sees them, or something, a polite way of saying that. Because sometimes the misinformation goes farther than the real information. And so having it right out there could help people work through it in their own mind.
Well, certainly the facts are going to be presented in this. I mean, if you go up at the top of the page, tax rate, I mean, you're addressing all these questions as you step through this graphic that we have in front of us now. I'd
Yeah.
just be careful that we don't confuse people with facts and fiction.
And yeah, we don't want to point it at this is how everybody's wrong.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because
I
if-
know, but people have talked about the Cook property. Many
Right.
people have asked us about that. That should be on here.
Right.
Yes, we did talk about the Cook property. It wasn't because it was too expensive.
All right.
How about referendum process?
right, that's what I was just thinking.
That's
Yeah,
got to be
right.
on there as well. A lot of misconceptions about that. And
Yeah. Put
Was
it
it up
on
there?
here. Yeah, it's the second one kind of there.
Okay.
at the top of the But
Yeah,
even that, right, we need to figure out, and at
I mean-
some point we need to talk about, okay, maybe it's no longer going to be a permissive. Now it's just going to be a referendum. But that's all right. You're absolutely right, Jerry.
I didn't squint enough to see that, I guess.
That's all right. I know it's kind of hard to read. I was trying to put them all so you.
What I think is interesting is it seemed to go from we need a referendum to this last meeting to say, I think that people were not clamoring for the referendum, but I still think it's the right thing to do.
Oh, it is the right thing to do.
Yeah, we have to do that.
Definitely.
Well, yeah, I mean, the people that we heard from just don't want it at all, so. That's,
At this point, but they were the ones asking for it in the earlier meetings.
Yeah, but if they pay attention to the information that's on the website, the sentiment is running 2-1 against them.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of them don't vote in our area.
Yeah, true.
And one of their questions that they asked that I don't know how we would cover it. Maybe it's here, Doug, but remember when they were asking who are the voters and, you know, can people vote and whatever, like, and I don't think that's really any other town's business if somebody chooses not to register to vote or registers in another state or, you know, that's not really something we track. But that was one of the questions that they were looking for was how many people don't vote. I don't know. I forget what their actual question was, but I knew
it was how many people pay taxes on the lake but are not registered to vote there. Of course, under FOIL, we're not required to compile statistics, nor are we required to get, you know, Board of Elections material.
Yeah.
And that was actually Mr. Footerman, who I spoke to yesterday for quite a while. Explained it to him, so he.
Yeah, with that, I think that is just a comparison to a school budget, because you own multiple properties, you pay school taxes on all of them, most likely, but you can't vote in every single school budget vote.
Well,
So
I do think that people are, when they talk about a 12% tax increase, I think many of these people have the false thought that
it's
their
the full
total tax
bill.
bill is going up
Right.
12%. It's not. It would be the town tax if it were to go ahead.
Right, and the people that I've been speaking to that have been calling me with that issue, you know, I go over their actual, what they're paying town taxes and how much it would go up. And, you know, obviously if you have a $10 million home, that's substantial and understandable. But, you know, if you have a house like mine, it's not as much of an, you know, an imposition. It's still, believe me, you know, as I've said all along, it's still more taxes. And that's, you know, we're talking about 30-year bond. That's over the 30 years that people's taxes might be raised. Of course, it depends on, you know, our budgets and total assessed value and tax rolls and stuff like that. But I don't see taxes going down overall. We have to worry about what's going to happen with our state tax, as we all know. Income tax, state income tax, I expect will go up. So we have to keep those things in mind. So you all know that, though.
So so this is a great list. Would we want to kind of advertise, put out some of the questions with some answers on the website and call it a virtual workshop and ask for people to submit questions that aren't already addressed that they have? And then we would post them up there and give people the format to be able to participate, but maybe not have it as a live meeting where people have to attend at a certain time. What do you think?
How do you think how will that be perceived
For
out
some
there?
people, I think it'll be fine because not everybody can come to our meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can post information on the website, but I think there has to be a live, virtual presentation. I mean,
Oh,
I don't think it's enough to just.
There has to be give and take, I think. I mean, there has to be some level of give and take, whether it's through emailing in questions or texting in questions or chat box. No open like back and forth. Maybe here, submit your questions in the chat box and we'll answer them as they come up. like a forum type of thing, but I don't know that we can just say, hey, we've pre-recorded it, here are the answers.
Well, I wasn't thinking it was the end of it. I was thinking it was the beginning of it. We would put this out and then we would get additional questions. And the only reason I was thinking that it would be good to do it over a period of time, give people a chance to digest what we put out there, instead of like cramming it all into one meeting. And then also give us a chance to make sure the answers are what we want to say and that we're not giving an off the cuff answer that isn't 100% of what we'd like to say. That was the reason why I felt like the virtual format for reasons that are good for people who are, thinking about it and us, could work, but also then maybe a meeting where we actually present it. And
Or it could be a pre-recorded presentation and then schedule a question and answer type of situation.
right.
Yeah, because we had mentioned wanting to have one before, at least I thought that's where the one before the next meeting and then one after. So I think, having at least two, this first one could be recorded and be presented. And then the second one is a follow-up to that. We would have more information. People would have time to digest it, like you said, Linda, and then for any other questions that might arise.
For those who know how long it takes to answer some of these questions, Doug, Jim, Terry, anyone who works in this area, how long do you think you would need to answer these questions?
So
Or is the answer to the question that we don't have the answer yet and we wouldn't have it until such time as we paid an engineer to do that?
I did talk to Greg Hoteling yesterday a little bit, and I said, what would it cost if we wanted you to do for instance, a traffic study or, a full EIS? And then one of the things we were talking about is, would we need to do a phase 1, phase 2 environmental study? Probably not a phase 2 because we wouldn't really be looking to construct anything big, but maybe a phase 1 just so we know what's in the ground, that sort of thing. So minus the traffic study, what he was talking about is probably somewhere in the neighborhood. We should plan for $5,000 to $10,000 for a phase 1, which that seems similar to some of the other stuff that we've spent, and maybe upwards of $7,000, $7,500, give or take, for a full environmental impact statement. So you're talking about $15,000 approximately, give or take, plus a traffic study would take some time, and you could be talking another $10,000 or so. But I think, Jim, you said that there might be some information also available for County Road 16, right?
Yeah, I reached out to county engineering and asked for the latest data from the last time they did a traffic study in this area to share with you guys.
Yeah. I did also talk to him. We do have the survey. And so one of the things I'm going to do today is I'm going to mark up the survey that we have and send that over to Greg so that he can kind of just do a real quick mock-up sketch plan for us. So we should have that, later this week, probably next week, I would say, so that we'd have something there that we could present. But I think the challenge as I look at these 3 categories is if we present this all at once, I think we're going to overwhelm people. I almost might suggest, I kind of like your idea, Linda, that maybe we could do it ahead of a workshop. Maybe we do a recording for the first category, do a recording for the existing conditions, talking about some of those issues, and do a recording for the proposed conditions and talk about some of those issues, and record those separately and post those on the website, and then have a workshop where we have the interaction. Because if we present this all at once, we're just going to overwhelm. People are going to get lost.
Yeah.
And I feel like the recording idea is good, but I also think text is good because people have to listen through a video to find the part that they're interested in when they could go to a question that they really care about and see an answer. So I would say it would be good to do both.
Well, it would be similar to the original presentation that Doug did with the that started this Tichenor Point thing off, that you have some graphics up there and a narration going along with it. That, the first one, the process, and I can't read it, it's kind of off the screen here,
And
but
financial
yeah,
impact.
process and financial impact. I mean, there would be a series of graphics that would, perhaps show some, various houses of various values, what the tax bite would be, and the referendum. I mean, that's pretty cut and dried. I mean, there's process for that. Many of these questions are just going to be a series of numbers presented, and then you have the graphics there, and you've recorded it, and it's on the website, and it's on wherever else we want to put it, and attack it like I think probably it is best to do it, and it's the way you eat an elephant. It's small bites.
The tax information, like for instance, just so you're aware, and I'll verify with Pam, but what I believe to be is the most expensive assessment that we have in the town of Canandaigua for residential is somewhere right around that 485 million. That's why I use that as the example. That's the high end. We don't have any residential homes assessed over 5 million that I'm aware of. And there are a number that are in that 2.4. That's why I used that in that original graphic. And there's a whole lot of them that are in that 1.2, but the average is the 300, and that $303,000 houses in Fox Ridge that I used as the example. So those are all real examples. So that information is already there. I mean, that's easy to put that together.
Well,
but
a lot of this,
I think it got lost in the hour-long presentation, and people didn't.
That's why I want to also have text where the question is there and the answer is there. So if that's your hot button, you go right there, but you don't have to listen to an hour-long presentation. Yep, because it is true. People just get lost when they're hearing. They want to focus.
now you've condensed this down into the common themes of the emails, Doug. But you get into areas like survey community for what they really want, professional feasibility study needed. Are those things that, that's not something that has a number attached to it necessarily. So answering questions like that are going to be a little bit more difficult, a little bit more, I don't know what.
Well, and so some of that, I'm glad you said that, because I wanted to bring that up. That's not something that I could possibly answer. You as a town board, that's a political decision. What some of the folks are saying to you is they discount the results as it wasn't a scientific professional survey that was done, and they believe you would need a whole new survey of the community. You as a town board would have to make that decision if that's something that you agree with or not.
Well, that survey would be the second item on the list up there, referendum. That's a survey.
Right.
I have to go. We have to go to Rochester.
Okay. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Joe.
yeah.
See you, Joe.
I
Back,
like
Joe.
your idea though, Doug, about splitting this thing into 3 different sections. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Have a good day, you guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you
Bye,
too.
Joe.
So. Yeah, I like your answer, Terry, that the survey. I think there was a fair amount of people throwing roadblocks in there with ideas of some things that we should do that would just slow it down and not allow it to go forward. So some of these things we're going to have to say aren't in our plan.
Or that they're not amenable to a survey. What would the survey ask? There's so many different moving parts here, but once we present it for a referendum, then if people want to go forward.
Well,
Say,
then
do you want
they
to
had-
preserve open space? Yes. Do you want to park here? No. There's too many.
Yeah.
variables.
Right. So, and then what do you do when you have a mix of people who say, yes, I want to park? Then you have to put it to a referendum at some
Yeah.
point.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the ultimate survey.
And that's our answer, I think.
Yeah.
Well, Doug, you mentioned a few minutes ago that you talked to Greg Hoteling about some of the elements of this thing. An environmental impact study. I can remember the one that was done for the RSM property years ago. That took quite a bit of time. Was there any mention of timing to do something like that?
Well, it depends, Terry, but keep in mind, I mean, you know, we're not looking to tear everything down and build 66 houses either. I mean, that's, you know, so it's,
Yeah,
you know, the environmental impact study, and as we go through a full seeker, I do agree. Dan O'Brien the other night said something about the short form EAF that I have on the website for seeker. That's just for the town board action. To actually purchase, yes, we will need a full long form seeker. And we'll need to
Yeah.
talk about the impact and that sort of stuff, but that can be done relatively quickly. We're not doing massive construction. I think the most construction we probably would be doing is be putting in a parking lot, you know, so, and that, the first step would be the land acquisition, and seeker could also be done separately. You know, when somebody buys a house and then they decide they're going to tear it down and build a new house, they don't do seeker on purchasing the land. They do that at the time they're doing the project. So we could do the same thing. We could do the land acquisition. We need to be aware of everything. 100% agree with that. So we need some level of environmental review, especially a phase one, I would think, at least, to make sure that there's no contaminants, there's no underground tanks, all that kind of stuff. But then when we actually get to construction, which was the construction, it's probably making some changes in terms of converting one of the existing buildings or having some restroom facility in one of the existing buildings, and then possibly moving or constructing a parking lot. That's probably about the extent of what we would actually be constructing. Everything else, like
Yeah.
the swimming area, floating and all that stuff. So I think it would be relatively, it wouldn't take a lot of time, honestly, to do.
Well, it's just that, you know, the long form seeker and EIS are not one and the same. I mean,
Right.
EIS goes a lot further than the long form seeker. So
Correct.
I was just thinking of timing with respect to the Kellogg family, that they do have a deadline, if you will, out there, Memorial Day. You know, it's been mentioned a number of times. So if we were to proceed with this, I mean, you do have to keep all that in mind.
So Doug, just so I clarify in my head, you said before the purchase actually happens, that would have to be done.
I think we'll want to, before we go to closing.
So
that
let's
we-
suppose, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I would think that we would want to do, before we go to closing, that we would want to do a phase one for sure. Make sure that there's no underground environmental contaminants, that sort of thing. And then we would do the long form seeker, which figure that's 2 months because of public hearing, setting a public hearing, and then enacting it the next month. The phase 1A could be done in the meantime. That's been taking us about 3 weeks by the time we order that to get that done. And then the full environmental impact statement, you know, that's where you get into more detail, but that's usually relative to the construction. That's not usually relative to acquisition. So that could be done after closing.
So my question is, in terms of approval process by us, where we stand in the contract, you know, I think that the contract that the seller used is, as I've said before, is a form contract and not really tailored for municipal purchase of property. And I think that the sellers have to know that these are things that have to get done before we can ultimately approve. And the public has to know that too, obviously, but, and I don't know that it's really adequately spelled out in that. I mean, it is, and it says we have to approve it, right? It says subject to municipal approval. I just want to make sure that they understand that that's part of our municipal approval. And I still, you know, you have it in here, but, and I hate to beat a dead horse, but I hate to use that term, but, you know, we're potentially purchasing a property at $5.3 million, right? Whatever the actual purchase price is. We should be getting clean title. We should not be that's why I mainly wanted this month to, for that to be cleared. It's not something that any buyer of any home would say, I'm gonna go finally forward without that being settled. And I see you have that on there, but we're putting, does it affect the purchase price? It's hard when we're a board and I'm not an individual purchasing a property. I could say to my husband, I'm not, this is what we got to do. We got to negotiate the price. How do we, and this is for those who have been through this process before, do we say to one person, this is what we need, and you do that and then come back to us, which is, what Doug has been doing with Chris. But, I'm not in favor of letting that go until after purchase. So I've said that a million times, just so it's clear.
So let's talk about purchase for a second. And so let's say purchase is closing, right? Because that's actually after you go to closing, then it becomes the town. So there's a
Right.
whole series of steps up until closing.
Right.
Including, okay, so what Chris Nadler, I talked to Chris Nadler on Tuesday. He did have a conversation with actually Dan O'Brien and Kevin Saunders. The three of them are going to have a meeting, okay?
Okay, great.
They've actually talked a couple of times now this week, but the Kevin Saunders, who's the attorney for the sellers, for full disclosure, he is, they are working on an updated abstract with everything. They are providing all of that information to Chris, and we'll have that relatively quickly, it sounds like, because they felt like they were in pretty good shape with that. But again,
I'm sure they do.
yeah, but that, and then Chris will have to review it, obviously. But again, all of that kind of stuff can be done, and we can do our title search. And if we need to hire another entity, we can be doing all of that all prior to closing.
Right.
So at somewhere point in time, you as a town board are going to have to say, here's the window of when we're going to have this vote. That we can still, a lot of things can be figured out and a lot of things can be subject to change up until closing, obviously.
Right.
And in terms of the purchase agreement, the family at this point, it's my understanding, is waiting for us. They understand that we need to amend the purchase agreement, but they don't want to keep sending us versions that we're not going to be able. They're looking for us to amend the purchase agreement and send it
Okay.
back.
All right.
So I think we need, going into this, we need to know, we talk a lot of hypotheticals, but we need to figure out the exact dates, because if we don't have the exact dates figured out, we're kind of just shooting darts at a moving target. It all builds back from the referendum date, in my opinion, to know what window we're looking at. I mean, I know I talked to you about this yesterday, and you have concerns about it. Do we redraft versus amend? I think that's something we've got to figure out. Do we amend with all these specific items in here that have come up as concerns and add those into the amendment moving forward and saying a referendum will be on this date? I know we're trying to figure out when that is. If it's in, we can't tie it to any sort of primary. Is it May? Is it June? Is it November? When is it going to be? So then we can not keep saying to the public, trust us, we've got to figure it out. It'll all work out. And we know how well that works out when you say to voter, just trust us, we got to figure it out. It's got to be spelled out to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jared. So the I think that is the next really big question. There's a lot that we could figure out and everything, but that question of when is this going to the voters, right? That's one of the fundamental things now. And yes, Terry, you're absolutely right. And I know I've talked, I think, with all five of you about it. The family has said, once this goes past Memorial Day, we may not be interested in working with you. They want to spend this summer marketing it if the town is not moving forward. On the other hand, do they have another offer right now? I don't know. I've heard conflicting reports. Honestly, I've heard that they have a standing offer at one thing, and then I've also heard that they may not. And of course, who knows?
I mean, we could always,
yeah, I'm sorry.
we could always put in that if it goes too far, that it's then, if they have a ready, willing, and able buyer at what we're paying or more within a certain amount of, then, you know, that's fair to them, then they should be able to, just like any residential purchase.
Right.
I think Greg wants to comment about the assessment value versus sale price. Yes, that was brought up by, I believe it was Twombly's or McGavern's possibly. That would be when you know, if you feel that your assessment price was too high and the evidence shows that the properties are selling for lower, then if your assessment is too high, then there's a process for that. I know that, I believe it was Twombly's who wanted some sort of remuneration for the, you know, their loss of value in their property. But that's the process that they'll happen. That's a consideration. It's, you know, and that I think was brought up by at our meetings with the owners, the neighbors, their concern of their assessments being too high. Pam's thought, based upon data that she looked at, was that it would not negatively impact, but that's obviously, you know, the owner of the property next to that would have a different point of view, which brings out, you know, bringing up different opinions, which I think are important. And that's going to be their opinion all along. I mean, I guess the question, if you look at the Sands property, for example, next to Ononda, it might be hard to tell, depending on when they purchased, when they sell, how much it's impacted by that park being there. And of course, it depends on how much time passes. So if one of the neighbors, Petitioner Point, sells next year for significantly less, then you would know that it could possibly be from that. So yes, those are things that have to be taken into consideration.
Are we going to allow Greg to have a couple of minutes? I saw his question there. Or did you?
That's for our chair to decide. I don't have to.
I'm fine. I felt like, yeah, Kathy opened it up, and Greg, it was that the concern that, oh, Greg is on mute.
You should be able to unmute.
Yeah, so real quick, this will only take 2 minutes. Somewhere I remember in my past life that if a property sells for significantly more than what the assessed value is, that exposes the community to a reval. And I don't have that memorized correctly. I know I don't. But my question is there a process that forces a reval? Because that's another thing I think that's behind this statement about the tax rate. They got the tax rate confirmed with different assessment, with, you know, a bunch of other different items. But
right. So
that's why the larger community, beyond the point, as I call it, is active in this, because they have an investment in that property. And one can argue each way, and I'm not going to argue either way in this conversation, that there's greater value in the property than it's assessed for. So if they get exposed to that and it gets a conversation going, you know, that's going to be a troublesome conversation for others that have lakefront property. That's my view.
Right. So that was what I said earlier when I spoke to Pam about our purchase of that land would not necessarily affect, because it's not a similar property. It's not a similar use. And so that is something that we have to address. So if it's being used as parkland, even though it's an arm's length transaction, it would not be a comp necessarily. So that is a question that we need to address. First, Pam thought it might affect other assessed values just based upon purchase price, but upon further reflection, she thought, no, if it's being used as public land, public parkland, it would not affect. So that's my question too.
But Pam has let us know.
Let me put one comment, please. And that is that 12,500 a foot, or whatever the number that Jim came up with, that will be a number that will resonate through the lakeside community. That's all I'll say.
Right.
That, you know,
That was based on actual sales of properties that were for building lots, and so
right. And that's my
they
point.
are appropriate.
They are appropriate, right?
And that has been raised numerous times in our meetings with many people and is in many emails. So yeah, that's obviously a concern,
But
a
I
big
think,
concern, and a legitimate concern.
and I think Pam
Absolutely.
Post let us know that a reval is probable in the next year. I think you just most recently sent that note.
But that's not necessarily going to be, that's not going to be driven by just this one potential purchase.
Right. It wasn't at all driven by this. purchase. It was driven by already purchases
Right.
that are exceeding the assessed values by whatever
greater than
threshold.
10% or
Well,
whatever.
once it drops below 95%, isn't that the trigger that,
Something like that, yeah. I
yeah,
don't know the exact.
Yes, so if I could just, Pam just told me yesterday, and this is being recorded, this will be shared, and then we'll have some information, and she's gonna report to you at the March Town Board meeting, but she just shared with me that the state has just determined that our equalization rate is 95%, and it is time to start the next revow. So that means that she would be starting June of 2021 for final roll March into May of 2022, which would then kick in obviously for the 2023 budget. So, but it is time to start that process, and it has nothing to do with this.
Right.
right,
That's the number that the state has determined that our equalization rate has fallen. And part of that is driven by the increased demand. We're seeing the demand not only on the lake, but all over the town. Houses consistently selling for over the asking price even, so.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, we've said that's happening in my neighborhood of people not from here who, you know, a $300,000 house is nothing to someone who's paying $25,000 in taxes on Long Island for a house that they sold for $750,000. So, but you know, that drives up the purchase price for the middle class
yeah.
homes. And then we're looking at reassessments. So, yes, Greg, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I was partially misunderstood what you were saying, but yes.
I think it definitely is something that needs to be spelled out pretty clearly that reval is happening regardless of this, because I feel like if we're not upfront about pointing that out, people will be saying, look, we told you it was going to happen, and then look, it's related to this.
Well, they're gonna say that anyway, Linda.
I agree, but at least we'll have the real information out there.
That's going to be a big one for sure.
So if you referendum pass a resolution at the.
Jean, we can hardly hear you.
I'm
Breaking.
sorry.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
a little better, yeah.
Okay, if you pass a resolution at your March 15th meeting to set the referendum, the 60 days is Friday, May 14th. Monday, the 17th, which I believe is a town board day, is 63 days. The following Monday, the 24th, is 70, and then that Saturday, May 29th, is the 75 days, and that is Memorial Day weekend.
So that, it feels like we're at a really critical point in time to make a
Yeah.
decision one way or another.
We have to schedule this referendum at our next meeting at the very latest.
Mhm.
I agree.
Does that give us enough time moving forward? Is everybody comfortable with that?
To answer all these questions.
I think we have the answer to most of them. Don't you
Well,
think?
Well, the knowing what other impact there might be as far as any other things, you know, the study of the property, do we need to redo the roadway? Things like that. You know,
Okay.
depending, because I keep going back to what Chris was saying about the driveway. You know, what constitutes overuse and overburdening that? Will that require to put something new in?
But
And what-
I think that driveway, Kathy found out that driveway is not part of their easement.
That's correct.
That's the funny part, is they thought it was,
Yeah.
but it is not. And our driveways at Ononda are just, some of them are just gravel.
I mean, I still, that the portion, so when that property was sold, the park area was cut into and divided among the other property owners. The Tishner Point, the Kellogg family retained an easement over their portion. They did not gain an easement over the Kellogg's property. So Dan, in his letter, if you read it, seems to be, he's careful to, it could apply to that. So if our park used that easement in front of their homes, it could become overburdened. But I don't think we would want to do that for that reason. We don't want, cars going back and forth endlessly in front of their homes. But again, that's part of the negotiation process where you can say, here, maybe you can have that back. That's yours. And we take this and part ways, but.
So let's
Confusing,
just talk
you know.
about that for a second. So and Jared, you brought up a very a very good point there too. So there's questions that we don't know the answers to today, that we're just not going to know the answer to. But I think if I was you, I would probably think about a couple of different steps, a couple of different processes here. Keep in mind, closing is when we actually become the owners of the property. The town of Canandaigua becomes the owners of the property at closing. Even if we set a referendum, we hold a referendum and we hold a vote, the voters are gonna say yes or no. Let's hypothetically say, yeah, they say yes. You as a town board still have to take the action, and there's still gonna have to be a resolution, even if the voters say yes, move forward with the property, to say, hey, town manager, just for example, we want you to sign the closing documents or go to closing. At any point in time, you're going to be able to say, no, don't do it because of this, that, or the other thing, or only do it based on all these other things have been addressed before we go to closing. There's still time after the vote. You know, it doesn't all have to be figured out right away. It's just to be figured out before closing.
A lot of it does have to be figured out because you're asking the taxpayers, do you want to undertake this knowing this is an issue? So some of the big things,
like the legal stuff, like the deed stuff. I understand what you were saying about that, because you were saying that there could be potential legal ramifications, right? But that can also be true about anything. I mean, look at the years that people sued over Ononda Park. And still, there's no telling that anybody could sue us at any time for anything.
Right. And that might be the answer, but we need at least going into the vote, maybe the answer is, yes, of course, anybody can sue anybody anytime, but is this resolved now or will it still be an issue? So people know that that's a potential issue or it's not. That's all I'm saying. We might not be able to resolve it, but that might be the answer.
So maybe it would be helpful for us to make a list of what are the open problems that we can see. Do you know what I mean? Like just what do we think are the things that we need to nail down? Because I heard Jared ask the question, do we have enough time to nail it all down? And I'm not 100% clear on what all the things we're trying to nail down are. And so I think it might just clarify for us, where are we?
Right, and especially if we're struggling to nail it down, you know, think of how everybody else out there who hasn't been knee deep in this for the last couple months, you know, is trying to wrap their heads around everything that's got to happen. So I like that idea as far as what are the must-haves that we need to know between now and that date.
So let's brainstorm it.
What's that?
I'm writing it down.
Okay. I think we all agree that my first suggestion is, and it's not the first in priority, it's just one that I think a lot of people have brought up, traffic and safety, impact on traffic.
All right, let me just make a note so you can all see this. So is that something that, let me ask you this, as you give me these, is it something that you want to be addressed before closing or before setting a referendum date? Let's separate that so that we can figure it out.
And for traffic and safety, I thought that my thought was buying it, that has to be settled before we open it to public use. We have to have a plan to improve traffic and safety, but
just a general question. I don't think we're going to have the ultimate thing resolved, but can someone tell us it's something we can solve, that it's not impossible, that based upon line of sight and how much land we have, that it's something that we don't want to buy a piece of property and then our engineers say, no, can't do anything with this. So I don't think the ultimate plan has to be resolved, but even people who are in favor of this say to me, when I'm driving down County Road 16 on a summer day, it's a nightmare by German Brothers or wherever. So just a general, yes, we can make it work, not what the ultimate answer.
Well, so, and that's the reason why for me, the traffic and safety one is an ongoing issue for the town. We've had additional enforcement, but we've never really gotten to where we've improved the safety on the road. It's not our road, yes, but so I'm looking at this park and saying, while this is a situation, is the park really making it worse, or is this just an ongoing problem?
I'm just talking about getting in and out of the park.
So that's site distance. That's all that is. A site
and how much driveway do you need? Do we need ingress and egress? You know, or can one road go through? And you know, just that simple kind of stuff that people are asking me about. It seems to me like we have enough, but I'm not an engineer, so that's all.
That's fairly simple. And that can actually be done, I think, even with the sketch plan, site distance stuff. I mean, that gets
Right.
into a little bit more of the engineering, but that's, I think, I've listed there before vote, because I think that's easy to do. When
Right,
you're
that's
talking
all I'm
about
saying.
the traffic study and the speed of the traffic, that's a different issue, I think.
Right, and I just mean speed necessary, can we make it safe for people turning in and out based upon what we know? And maybe
Yeah.
that's site distance. That's
I
been,
guess.
people have asked me continuously coming south and turning in. Can we do that safely? Again, not a final plan, and we're not going to solve all those issues, but again, even people who are in favor of it know the issues on County Road 16. And, maybe it's no different from putting a house there, and depending on how many cars we have there, it's not an issue or something that we can resolve. So I think that's, for me, a big one. Does that make sense? So I'm not
Yeah.
expecting a final. Go ahead,
Isn't
Terry,
that
I'm sorry.
something the county's got? Isn't
I
that
was
something
just
the
gonna say
county's gonna be involved with?
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that a lot of the comments that we've received address other parts of County Road 16.
Right.
When we talk about site distance and speed of traffic and safety of the road, I would think that we would be concerned with a certain distance around this park, not 3 miles up the road. I mean, there are other issues there that perhaps we should weigh in on, but with respect to this particular potential purchase, I don't think other parts of the road necessarily enter into making a decision on this.
I mean, I agree with that. I just want people to say, is it something that we can do? Again, maybe it's not ready now, but that's going to be questioned. We can't just say, oh, we can do that later. If we're asking the taxpayers to pay $5 million for a piece of property, they want to know that this is something that can be accomplished. So
Well, the people who live there seem to be able to get in and out without, having accidents on the road. So,
because it depends on how many cars are there and coming in and out on a given.
well, there won't be more than 20 from what I've seen earlier here.
Well, I guess that's another question. How do you prevent people from parking on the grass? And I'm just telling you the questions I'm getting. And the answer is, all right, if you don't think that's important, but I can guarantee you it is important to a lot of people and just, regular people. So.
I was just suggesting an answer, Kathy.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. That's fair.
Well, Kathy, isn't that something the county's got to get involved with, since it's a county road, not a town road?
I'm not looking to change. I'm just saying the general question of, and Doug said, maybe it's, again, you guys know better than me. You have a little bit more background in this, but can we generally put in a driveway, a parking area, and get in and out of that park area reasonably safely, or just by design? Again, people are always going to argue it's not safe, right? And ultimately that comes down to, but is the land and what we have appropriate for 20 cars, coming in and out or over a period of time? That's all.
So the site distance, that's actually even on our checklist when somebody's building a house.
Right.
I don't think that's that's something that we can answer. That's something I feel like we can answer fairly quickly. That's data. We'll have to have the engineer survey go out, and they'll say, okay, here's the site distance to this point and to a particular point. And they'll put that actually on the proposed plans when we get to that point. Now, if you want to advance that and you want to do that now, that's fine. We don't normally, and it's a different situation where a municipality buying a piece of property for a particular purpose, but usually when somebody buys a house, we're not asking them to provide us the site distance before they go to closing, right? It's only as part of the construction, but this is a different situation. So we can, but still, I think we can do that. The speed studies and the safety, that's when you get into a more in-depth traffic study. The county, I believe, has that data that they should be able to provide us. And we did, the county just a couple of years ago did a whole entire traffic study. And one of the things is they said there's not much we can do.
Right.
The town should look at Middle Cheshire Road, but anyway.
And maybe again, that might be the answer, but people, and it doesn't seem to be a problem for people when they have giant parties and they're coming in and out of their driveways, right? So again, the answer might be that this is similar to, you know, for the amount of cars, yes, this is something that we can work with. That might be, you know, the answer. So,
Yeah, I think we should share on there that the information from the county study. I mean, we're not gonna fix Westlake Road right now. But
No,
we can handle our part. We can handle our part, you know, the getting in and out of the park. As far as the rest of the road, I mean, that's been an issue for,
right.
you know, as long as there have been motorized vehicles, I'm sure. And then just put that down. The county did this study. Here's what they found.
okay, that's mine.
Talking to somebody else. I just muted him. He can unmute himself if he wants to talk to us. Yeah,
Or
and
talking
then,
to himself.
yeah, maybe. Also, when it comes to parking, keep in mind, and I know we've talked about this in the past also, the town board, from what I understand, can petition the county to make County Road 16 no parking if that's what you want to do. I think you've got to think about if that's what you want to do, but you do have that option. And I would also remind you that near Ononda Park, that actually is exactly what happened. The town board said at the time, could you make, I think it's the east side of County Road 16, no parking for the exact reason of people entering and exiting the park. And so the signs are up and that actually is no parking. So you could do the same thing again here. That's a town.
That's a good idea.
That would be a fair, that would be a fair request and a fair compromise, I think. To put
And I
that
think that goes to part of that, the short, the short answer.
Definitely. I mean, I don't know how many public hearings we'd have if we tried to make all of Westlake Road no
Oh
parking.
my God.
I don't think many people would complain, but maybe a few.
The pitchforks will be out.
Yeah.
I have enough pitchforks in my back.
Right, I have one.
They'd be dry, yeah. They'd be showing up at your door right now, Linda.
Right, well, yeah, all my neighbors.
Yeah, they'd just drive right down today.
Right.
So is that something, I listed it before vote, but is that something you'd want to do before you schedule a vote, or is that?
No, if
something-
we don't own the property, why would we do that?
All
I just
right.
think it's a solution that's
Yeah.
available.
Hey,
So
this is something that we would do. These are
Right.
kind of like,
I
yeah,
don't-
these are things that we'll do.
I don't even think before closing, we would do it before we open it to the public.
Yeah,
These are things that can be done to improve
The
This-
situation.
at that location, that we as a town have the ability to do.
And we are just talking about Kitchener Point. We're not talking about the RFN property.
Correct. We're not talking about that at
Not
all.
yet.
Because I know there was a lot of questions about the parking and safety about that person as well.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be a totally different discussion.
Different
Yeah.
conversation.
That's
Yeah.
a completely bigger, different parking question.
Okay.
that starts at 10. That
Yeah,
meeting
but it
starts
is
at 10
a
o'clock.
question.
I'm
it is a
busy at
question that-
Doug almost
It is
jumped
a-
on his coffee right there. He almost sent that onto his monitor real quick.
All right.
It is a question that has to be addressed, though.
Okay, so what are
Yes.
the other things that we need to put on this list? These are the open questions that would
Oh, shit.
prohibit us from feeling comfortable going forward.
All right, Jared mentioned environmental. Do you want to put that on? The phase one?
Yeah,
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So before closing? I don't think you need to, we could always stop it. If we find out there's an issue, we could always say we're not going to closing.
Right, I mean, anything could be a showstopper, but, obviously we wouldn't plan for a showstopper.
does this
Um,
also require a SHPO review, Doug,
Yes,
since Native Americans live there?
yes.
was
When
gonna
we
be
do when we do the long form seeker and we go through that process, that will trigger that. Yes.
So long form seeker before closing, is that what we need, or what do we need?
Yeah, I would say before closing. Again, it's not because you have two different things kind of going on simultaneously. You want to know if the voters want you to purchase it, right? Set that aside for a second. Let's hypothetically say that yes, they do. Then we still have a series of things we need to do before we go to closing, including the long form seeker.
And some of these have to be started while the referendum's going, timing out, because if not, we'll never get them done.
So for those of you who have been through the, because it's historic property, based upon the use that we want to use it for, which is basically to keep it that way, do you think that the likelihood of us being stopped from doing what we want to do because of that, what's the likelihood? Right, we don't want to change that much, right?
I
Or
would
try to
doubt
keep-
there'd be any problem,
Okay, that's what I thought, but,
really, yeah. It's just a box that has to be checked.
okay,
And there might need to be a study, and also keep in mind, I've had conversations with the Iroquois Seneca Nation. They very much want to work with us, and so
I would love
yes,
that.
we've got to go through the process, and as Carrie said, we've got to follow the regulatory process. But on the other hand, we would also if this all happens, it would be about the protection and preservation of that. So I think SHPO would look very favorably on that if they had to
Yeah.
get involved. So
It
I
just,
think
yeah,
people will ask about that. They have brought it up in some of the emails and some of the meetings, so.
mhm.
Okay, now what about, is there anything relative to the easement? What is that part? What would we write here relative to? I think Kathy, you were the one who was,
Well,
maybe.
for me, you know, I think we just need to know where all the parties stand on it. Have we, and I'm just thinking out loud before you, that's probably general enough. So that the voters go to say whether they want to go through this or not. Have the neighboring properties, has a resolution been reached? Or given what we know, is it even an issue? And maybe that has to do with, you know, how we design the park. Maybe we don't need that. Maybe we don't need to put anything there. Maybe we can do, you know, ingress and egress to the south of that the deed restricted area. So I think we just need to know as to how, based upon, you know, whatever the situation is, I'd say in the next month, when they're hammering this out. So the voters know this is the situation, this is what we're dealing with. Does that make
Do we-
sense?
Do we think that having some sort of park plan that shows that we're not really talking about putting things there could help those neighbors?
Yeah, I mean, that could be an answer to that question, you know, maybe that's, you know,
They're
Yeah.
worried about us putting something in that area. And if it's deed restricted, it's deed restricted. Well, we can work around that.
we need to
But-
answer that question, that's part of it. Plus, also, you know, it's always been my issue, buying something that has a deed, you know, we made a purchase price based upon thinking that it was completely clear. And that's what the attorney's gonna work on. And then,
But the
you know, Chris,
appraisers knew, right? The appraisers knew about the deed restriction when they set the value of the land. So.
I know, but we're buying a piece of property for that much money, a chunk of which we can't use. That's all I'm saying. You know, it's like I buy my house and then I, you know, put in a purchase offer and I find out that I can't use a quarter of it. That might affect our purchase price, our plans, and maybe it doesn't, but that's the answer to that question. And I just think that's out there. That will be, you know, maybe it's not consideration. Let's get a plan to see what it would look like without it.
the deed restricted area was factored into the
Appraisal.
appraisal.
I get that, but we offered a purchase price when we walked that property and I walked that property. We did not know that. Just like when you buy your own house and someone tells you, oh, put a pool back here or not, or you just thought you had
Yes,
land that was yours. That's all I'm saying.
I hear what you're
that's true,
saying.
but now we know because that was stated.
Right. Now
in the
we know that's
presentation that
so,
was given us. So now we know.
Yeah. And I agree with what you say about buying a house and finding out later, because that exactly happened to me. But I feel like in this case, we had never established the price until we found out and until we had the appraisal. So
Right.
I feel
But-
like our position isn't exactly the same.
it's not exactly the same, but now you know that, or we don't know if we can use that property until we know what's been decided. So the taxpayers know what they have. You know, I'm not saying it ultimately affects it. And maybe if you have, you know, you buy your house and there's, you know, an acre behind you that's, you know, restricted, maybe that's a good thing. But I just think, you know, I've said enough on this, so you know my issue on it.
Hey,
Yeah.
can I just touch base on that for a quick second, just real quick? So when we walked the property, you're absolutely right, Kathy, we did not know about the deed restrictions. And our discussion at the time was, relocating the driveway, but that was a request of the neighbors
I know.
that we relocate that. So, you know, maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't happen if we move forward. I know Dan O'Brien's letter, he said we wouldn't be able to put concrete pads for the picnic tables. Well, we don't do that in any of our parks. Actually, you go down to Ononda, we use lightweight metal picnic tables intentionally so that the lawnmower can just push against them and move them. And I don't think there would be any restriction in placing a movable, because it's not a structure, a movable picnic table on that grass area. But the plan has always been to use the south side of that driveway, whatever the case, regardless anyway, that would be the primary area that we'd be using. So again, as we've talked about before, I don't know that it would even matter if the deed restriction is there for our purposes. But
And that might be the answer. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
That whatever our plans were, it doesn't matter.
That's where
In terms of this,
right. Coming from what Linda was saying though, too, if we have that design, and I mentioned this earlier, if we have a mock-up, doesn't have to be anything professionally engineered, just here's where we're anticipating putting having
Bathrooms.
parking. Yeah, we're gonna have to have bathrooms. Where are those gonna be? And then, as far as I understand, pretty much everything else, other than a lifeguard tower and some floating docks out into the floating buoys out into the water, it's gonna be pretty much as is. And I think that needs to be spelled out.
To
That
help people know what we're thinking of spending too. That's
Right.
minimum.
what we're gonna spend, and then the neighbors, so we're not putting some, yeah, we're gonna have some pavilion that will, we'll rent out to the, the Cub Scouts for 6 a.m. revelry every summer morning, something like that, that it's gonna be small and not disturbed.
At this time. Yeah,
Yes.
that's the only.
In a certain sense, the deed restriction plays into the view that we've had for this park, which is to keep it wide open,
Right.
to not construct anything,
Too
but
much,
to
right.
maintain what's there. So
And we
in a
need
sense,
to-
the deed restriction doesn't hurt that view.
and just to beat the dead horse a little more, we talk about we now have an appraisal. That appraisal assumes 2 building lots, which is different than what we're using.
But that's what somebody would be willing to pay perhaps.
I know, but question is for the taxpayers, I'm going away. That's all I have to say.
All right, what else do we have on this list? Because we want to try to get the list complete.
Okay, so let me just ask, these deed restrictions, this whole discussion, and I don't even know, and Chris Nadler has even said to me, we may not come to anything different than what we know today. They're going to try to meet with Dan O'Brien and Kevin Saunders, but it is entirely possible that there is no agreement, that it is what it is.
Right.
And then I guess my question is here with regard to this deed restrictions, before you set a vote, do you want that figured out, or before
No,
closing, or?
For me personally, I just want to know if the answer is it's not going to be resolved, then that's the answer. I think you have to address it. If after this period of time, the owners of the other properties there saying, we're not going to change this.
Well, maybe it's the impact of so what you want to know before the vote that we would have of the town board is what is the impact of those deed restrictions? Are the neighbors gonna say, hey, we're gonna fight you tooth and nail on it? Or are they gonna come to, oh, okay, it's gonna be open anyway, so it is compliant?
And even if they do fight us tooth and nail, doesn't matter. What is it? There might be nothing to fight us on. Right. And I think that with what they have done themselves, that's, that's precarious ground to be on.
Yeah. All right. What else needs to be on this list for us to kind of feel comfortable if we were to vote on it ourselves? Because we don't want to, find out at the last minute we should have been doing some work.
Do you want a sketch plan before?
So I would put down a site plan on that, Doug, before. I think
Sketch or site?
that's gotta be, what's that?
Sketch or site?
Just a sketch.
Sketch plan, yeah.
And I feel like that has to be ASAP because it's got to be in that workshop.
Yeah.
That's gotta be before we set a date. I mean, that's gotta be like right up from front and center.
I'll have that for you next week.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I feel like that'll be helpful for people who are interested in what the park's going to be like too.
I just have a general question. So I know we've talked, Kellogg family wants to try to preserve the cabin or the house that's there, sort of as a, have we determined how much of what it is now would stay? So would it stay sort of as a walk-through museum, or would just the walls be there and it could be a shelter? What is the plan, if any, for that? Would we need security there, you know?
Yeah, so it seems, and again, we're still in terms of personal effects, the way that, and that was kind of a hang up on the purchase agreement, the personal items that are in the facility currently. So let's talk about, so there's two main buildings. Number one, I think the majority of us walked through, right? Number one being the main cabin, and then number two being the secondary that kind of has the garage attached. My thought has always been that the secondary one, actually, I think fairly easily we would be able to convert that into restrooms, and everything is already there, and that become the restroom facility, and maybe there's some other component associated with that building. And then preservation of the main building, which is the one that has the fireplace and everything, that be more along the lines of the museum and everything that we'd be doing there. It is my understanding, based on the way that we left it, that the Kellogg family is interested in furthering that goal of the creation of a museum. And I believe that any of the items that they would be leaving, they would be donating to the town of Canandaigua. So they would then become the town of Canandaigua. There might be things in there currently that they do not want to leave. And so that's some of the logistics that we'll still have to work through and figure out with them. But there's a number of items where they would be donating. So I would envision, truthfully, in the operations, and I did factor in that June 11th presentation, park rangers, because I do think at the end of the day that we're going to need to lock the building and to make sure that it's secure, that we'll have to, have at least that, in addition to lifeguards, obviously, if we're operating the beach there. So that area is secure and that any of the contents in it are at least secure in that manner. We'd have to add it to the sheriff's patrol list like we do, and we may even have to look at a security type thing there. But I don't think we need security guards there, no, because we don't do that for any of the other parks. And anything that would be left would be, it's my understanding, donated to the town of Canandaigua.
All right, and what else would we need to kind of try to nail down?
I mean, the tax implications, which Doug has already done, potential tax, but I know it's been done, but.
All right, hearing nothing. We can always, if something comes to mind, we could always bring it up and send Doug a note, but it doesn't look as worrisome as I was afraid of.
These topics that have before vote, I mean, really, we're talking about, well, a couple of them, tax implications, sketch plan. I mean, that information, I would think we ought to have not just before the vote, but before any, you'd have to have that before any presentation is made. So, I mean, if a vote was going to be held in May, we don't want to put that information out there in April. Yeah.
Right.
I think a lot of these are part of that, also part of that. This is kind of in my mind what we need as a board. I think a lot of these are in those questions already, which I still think need to
quite a
be
bit
answered per se. And, but for us as a board, before it goes to vote.
So assuming that, well, we already have the tax implication stuff, I can just redo the presentation for that. The sketch plan, I really believe that I'll have that, next week. There's not a lot to do to that. When you're talking about sketch plan, that's looking at the survey. Here's where this is going to be. This is what that's going to be. The site distance, that's where you get into a little bit more. I don't know if I can have that in time for next week or not, but we can have that, before anything goes to vote. And keep in mind, as Chris Nabler said, you can cancel the vote if we find out that there's an issue. But it seems like to me, based on this list, that I guess the first thing I would say is let's schedule the workshop. And then secondarily, there's not that much that, is there anything else that you need in anticipation of you scheduling a vote at your March 15th meeting?
I don't think so,
No.
but I'll look.
I don't think so either. I think at our March 15th meeting, we had to schedule the vote.
Yeah, and I even think that, I'm looking at this and saying, how would I solve it if this was a problem, the site distance? Do we have the option of putting a stop sign at the opening to the park? There's a whole bunch of little questions that, in terms of potential solutions for some of these issues that might help the speed in general coming down the hill, so it'll be interesting to kind of try to work through those things.
Yeah, honest and truly, I don't think the site distance is going to be an issue. I mean, we'll get the actual numbers so that we have it. We'll have them go out there and do that. But, we would require somebody building a house to also have the site distance. And I can tell you that I don't think I've ever seen a case where somebody has said they can't build a house because there's not enough site distance.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of ways to help with the traffic and the speeding and all of the things that people are really suffering with.
All right, so let me throw one more curveball at you here.
No.
I know you love this, right? I know that we keep saying that the family wants an answer by the end of Memorial Day, and Jared had mentioned it there in November, it is an option. It may not be a good option, but it's an option that at least you should talk about and consider. If it does go to November, I would say that there's a better chance that you may not end up ever going to closing. But it is an option that at least should be discussed.
You mean
Whether
have
it's here or in
a referendum in November instead of some other time?
Mhm.
Tying it to the general election in November.
It doesn't feel like it's in a spirit of good faith that we would put it off so long. I'm sure more people would vote if it was in November. That's the good news about November, but I feel like we're not really operating as a good.
I think we kind of need these, but see where we stand with these questions. I don't know if the primary election would be an option. Doug, did you look into that?
Yeah, that's not an option.
It's not both. I don't even think both parties will be primary.
And I was told that since that's a function of the party, not the Board of Elections, they just do it for the party. So yeah.
And we actually, Chris Nadler and I had I think I may have told you, but Chris Nadler and I had a phone conference with Jamie Farr to discuss the school budget piece. It's not really an option is the answer to that. And then we had a separate conversation with Mike Northrup, and it's not an option for exactly that. And also, it fundamentally comes down to it's a different section of law. Election law governs the elections for instance, like primaries, and New York State town law governs the law for referendum questions that the town puts on the ballot.
Well,
waiting until November really prolongs the agony for everybody.
I think so too.
I think so too.
But another consideration, though, kind of on the other side of that is there will be a school budget vote in May, and in June there is a primary. If we schedule this thing in May, you're asking people to come out 3 different times potentially to vote on some issue. So is that kind of I don't know.
Voter overload?
Yeah, overload.
So
I
don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the downfall, so pros and cons. The pros of doing it sometime in May would be it's sooner, we get it done, we fish or we cut bait and we move on and we have closure. The cons would be we're getting people 3 times within a month period to come out and vote on something. And then we'd have the cost associated with running that. I don't even know what that would be or anything about that. November, tie it to the general, but then we're prolonging it. It would have to be put into an amendment probably to the purchase that if any time between now and November, they had an equal or greater offer, that they are free and clear with no penalty no prejudice from the town if they were to sell it, if they had another offer coming in. So,
Well, you'd almost have to do that, Jared, to.
yeah, that would have to be in there to say
Yeah.
that we're scheduling this in November, and if you have at any time, and maybe they'll say, all right, we got somebody for 5.9 million, our initial asking price. Or maybe they come back in August and are like, hey, listen, we can't schedule it right now for November. For one, we'd have to kind of redraw everything because we can't schedule it. We'd have to schedule a scheduling meeting to be able to schedule it within the 60 to 75 day window.
Yeah,
I lost track of your scheduling.
Yeah, we can't schedule it now and say, hey, we're gonna have a referendum on November 2nd,
Oh, we'd have to vote.
because that's outside of our window. We'd have to vote to, I don't know what we would do.
Oh, I believe you can put it on the general. I believe I know that
Okay.
that's 60 to 70, but I think there is an option where
So
you can,
60 to 75 would be for a special election.
for a special, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
and then, okay, so we could say we're gonna put it on the November, okay.
Correct.
Good, so then forget my schedule to schedule a scheduling comment.
Okay, so where are we?
I already did.
No idea.
Close. November or close? I'm on close. I want to be done one way or another.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I do too. You're
I
just kicking the
prefer
can down the
close.
road.
I prefer closer because it's prolonging the agony. If I feel that all these questions have been answered in my mind so that the public has enough information to go forward or will by the time the vote happens, then I'm in
Right.
favor of sooner rather than later.
All right, great. Well, I was hoping that we might have had time to talk about the RSM, but I feel like I have
No,
10 o'clock.
I got
No, please,
another
no.
on that.
I think everybody's focus is shot.
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like we'll, at the next meeting, go with our consensus of setting something sooner.
Okay, how about a workshop? You had said, so the next meeting is March, let me just share my calendar here. Next town board meeting is March 15th. You said you were gonna have a workshop prior to that town board meeting. So you've got, probably not next week because I need a little bit of time to get the sketch plan. I
Yeah.
want to have that done and everything. So you're probably looking first or second week in March.
Sounds good.
Pick a date. March 9th is
Yeah.
my birthday, so not that day. So,
Hey, how about
Definitely
we
that
do
day. We'll have a
how
big
about we-
party for you. We'll even sing again like we did.
yeah. thanks.
Friday, March 5th, I'm getting my second COVID shot, so I might be sick and not able to.
So let's do the 8th of March.
I'm getting my first one then, but that's fine.
First one is no big deal.
First one's easy, the second one
Yeah.
is,
All right.
You want to do it a
All
Monday
depends.
night or you want to do it a
Monday
Wednesday night or do you have a preference?
Monday night.
The 8th?
It's our usual night.
That's the 8th?
The
Yeah.
8th? Okay,
Okay.
evening, I'm assuming?
I have a question. How detailed of minutes do you want? Do you want detailed or do you want it's just open, this is,
Well, we have a
talking
recording.
minute, or what do you want?
We have a recording like Linda said, so.
But you still have to have minutes in the book.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess the question is, how detailed of those minutes do you want? Because those are your permanent records, not recording. So you want very detailed minutes. I'm gonna request that you hire a stenographer. Other than that, you're not getting detailed minutes. You're not gonna get what you've been getting at the regular town board meeting. So you gotta tell me what you want, so I can go.
I guess normal minutes probably, that are fairly detailed.
And you're gonna need to hire a stenographer, and I'm requesting you hire a stenographer, please, because
Gene, you're really garbled, but what Gene was saying,
You are.
Yeah.
you're a stenographer.
Microphone is bad on her.
Yeah. I just ordered webcams yesterday, so she can get a new webcam and hopefully
Right.
fix that. But so Gene is basically saying for that level of detail in the workshop, because it's a lot of time for Gene to try to put that together. She is suggesting that if you want that level of detail, that we hire a stenographer to take the recording and so that it's all there.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah,
Okay.
fine with me.
Me too.
Some people read, some people watch, and that way we have both.
Right.
Covered.
All right, did you want this evening or during the day? You want it evening? Is that what, more like 6 PM like we normally would do? Okay,
Yeah,
we'll plan on March the 8th at 6 PM for the, are we calling it a workshop?
Sure.
All right.
information session. You know,
Information session.
Yeah, information
Ah.
sounds better.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what we did with the highway garage when we were
Right.
working on that.
Okay, and it's specific to Tishner Point only. We're not going to talk about the other property at all, right?
At that one, right.
Correct. Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
Perfect.
That's the urgent one. Okay.
And some
so-
things will, translate just by virtue of, the process, obviously.
so we are continuing the Titchener Point, not that, sorry, I'm drawing it. We're continuing the RSM public hearing at our next meeting. So
We can
don't-
close that then.
We can
Yeah.
close it and
And
then we
close it.
can, because that doesn't need the same level of workshop information. But it might because of the parking and the other things, but
And people can always submit questions. Just
yeah, and then submit their questions and then we can answer them. But I don't see that needing the same level.
No, I don't,
No.
I agree.
All right. So are we ready to adjourn?
You left us, Linda. We can't see you anymore.
Oh, yeah, my video clip. So are we
A lot of
ready?
balloons in the background.
Oh, she's asked it
Her
twice.
husband.
Motion, yeah, so
I think
moved.
you've left already, so yes.
I'm here, I'm here.
Thanks, team.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay,
Bye.
Bye. everybody.
bye.